Well, this episode caused me to cry a little bit. And just when you think you've gone through the healing of a loss in your life, something comes up that triggers you, that makes you think maybe there is some more learning to be done. Maybe there's some more healing to be done. I'm not a mom. I am not a parent. I do not have children. And when I say those words out loud, sometimes it hits me differently than when I say it to myself, or when I'm holding space for myself or somebody else. I wasn't one of those people that held on to the, oh my gosh, I need a child. I want a child. And I know people like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we each have this role or this feeling that resonates with us about motherhood and fatherhood, parenthood. And I've had many of these conversations with clients, with friends, in regular conversation, just with people that I've met. And what I realized is that every one of us that doesn't have children has our own story and our own reason why. In some way, I'm still trying to figure out what my why is. Where I wanted to go with this episode was really just to give you a little insight about me and share openly and honestly about my personal story so that it's a safe container for you to share yours. Because what I want to do is give you a chance to share your voice on Holistically Speaking. And as I've mentioned in episodes in the past, I want you to have the freedom and feel like this is a safe place to share. And I want it to be a place where you share your voice more. So instead of just being an active listener and tuning in, which you are more than welcome to do, I also want to give you the space to share here on the show. So go to speakpipe.com/holistically speaking and tell me your why. So I spent a beautiful weekend with friends, different friends from different parts of my life on different days. And I'm pretty sure that's where all of this is coming from. Not to mention just turning 50. I'm sure that has something to do with it too. But I spent a beautiful weekend with friends, and Saturday was especially meaningful to me because it was with my friend Travis, who I've known for 25 years since our Air Force days. And he now has a daughter, Anna Grace, who is getting ready to go to college and is going to be right here in the New York area, so I can see her on a regular basis. And AG has been a young woman I've seen grown up just to be the most spectacular human being. And much of that goes to Travis for being an incredible single dad. But there was a conversation we had, and it was about him knowing that there have been strong women around Anna Grace in her life. And he mentioned me as one of them. And I take that very seriously. Because like I said, when you're not a mom, when you're not a parent, and you have that nurturing heart, it extends you on a different level. You know, we're not given those responsibilities that might come with being the parent. But when that child is in your care, or you are being given the gift of being part of their process, their upbringing in some way, the responsibility, to me at least, is extremely important. So to know that I've been such an integral part of AG's life, even though she lived thousands of miles away, it touches my heart. But it makes me think, if I am such an important part of a child's life. AG being one of many, because I have my nieces, I have my goddaughter, I have other friends with children that I feel like I've been a pretty important part of their lives as well. Why wasn't I blessed with having a child of my own? I've been married twice, one time for over 10 years. I've actually never taken a fertility test to know if I could have children when I was in serious relationships. I don't know if I've ever been in a position where I've actually thought about why it didn't happen so seriously to where it impacted me greatly. The one time I do remember was right after I lost my dad. I think that was the one time where I thought to myself, I really want a child. But back then, as a 29-year-old, I know now that that was a replacement for something that I had lost. Not exactly the best time to bring a child into the world. And quite frankly, it was only a few years later that my husband at the time and I did separate. So there's a reason for everything, right? So I think I'm still learning those lessons myself. And while I'm at a point where children are not going to be a part of my life as the mother, as I'm in the dating world now, I know that there are so many wonderful children that can be a part of my life with me if they have me as a friend or just a voice of reason, because it's never replacing anyone. That's never how I've looked at it. But I wonder sometimes why that wasn't part of my life. And I'm not going to discount the fur baby parents out there. Some make a choice to just be a pet parent, and there is nothing wrong with that. I'm one of them. In fact, my 17-and-a-half-year-old Calico has lasted longer than any relationship I've ever had. And that means something to me. We've been through a lot together. Many of you have seen Miss Eliza Doolittle right here. She's made many appearances on HIListically Speaking. And she's a really big part of my life. And I often say that she saved me as much as I saved her. So there's something to be said about that as well. That each of us have our own journey in parenthood in some way. And while I didn't have to raise money to send her to college, she's been an expensive pet. But I would never change anything for that. And can we talk briefly about being asked the question of why you don't have kids? Because I imagine with the number of times I've been asked, you have too. Why don't you have kids? What's the reason? Most of the time it's just curiosity and inquisitive nature. I imagine there is a more compassionate and kind way of asking. And it depends on the generation asking you too, right? You know what I'm talking about. And most of the time you just answer with kindness because there's no, negative side to it. It's just people with a healthy curiosity. But there are times where it's not so thoughtful. And I recall one of those times, and maybe you have this story too. And if you did, I'd love for you to share. But I remember being in conversation about children, and the conversation was getting a little heated. And then it just turned into a point where the response to me was, I'm not fully a woman because I haven't had children. Yeah, that one hit me. And it wasn't a kind thing to say. And I'm sure there are those of you out there that probably that's sitting with you in a triggering way. And I was there too, because it was also somebody that I care about deeply that said that. And I don't think it was meant to be vindictive, but it was kind of like not the way to prove the point of why not being a parent makes you any less of a human being, or a woman. And I had to take that one in for a second. And I honestly, to this day, don't really remember what my response was. But even while I'm saying that right now, I'm thinking that doesn't really feel so great in my gut. And if it doesn't feel good now with all the growth and the healing and the, work that I've done on myself, I can only imagine that my response back then was probably not very tactful. The Aries, she still lives inside me. There's still a lot of fire in Hilary. So I don't recall what my response was, but I do remember how it felt. And it just, for those listening who are parents, and even those who listening who aren't, I think this goes back to having thoughtful response, thinking about the words that you use and you choose with somebody, even if it's just an inquisitive nature or you're curious, to come from a place of kindness. Not that your intent is not kindness, but it's really just being more mindful of the words that we use and we choose. Because even when we're inquisitive about things, there could be a possible upset that it could stir up in someone if you're not too careful. And I'm not saying we need to walk on eggshells, but I'm just saying that before we say things, before the words come out of your mouth, remember that words can be healing as much as they can be hurtful, even if there isn't intent behind them. So just something to think about. So I just want to keep this episode short. It really was just an opportunity to open up and give you a little behind the scenes tour of Hilary's why, so that you feel more comfortable sharing yours. So how can you do that? I just want you to go to speakpipe.com/HIListically Speaking. I will put that in the podcast notes and press record. This is an opportunity for you to share your why, to share your name, where you're from, and your reason for not having children. It could be a choice. It could be out of fear. It could be a regret. It could be a hope that there's still a possibility. All stories matter. And if you know someone else that might find this beneficial, that wants to share, you can definitely share that link with them and encourage them to tune in. And if this podcast touched, moves, and inspires you in any way, let me know. And I want to leave you with this. It's a moment of gratitude, really, because this podcast is therapeutic for me as well. And sometimes I don't even realize how therapeutic it is until I press record, especially when I'm doing these episodes without a guest, without someone to riff off of. And it's really just me having a conversation with you. So I just want to say thank you for that, because even in this conversation that we're having right now, and I do consider it a conversation because I know you're listening and I know you're feeling and I know you're tuning in. And I mean that on more than just one level of wearing headphones or earbuds. You're tuning in, you're really listening, and I appreciate that. But it is cathartic. It's healing for me to be able to express this and share it and know that someone on the other side is feeling similar, if not the same. And it gives me an opportunity to just connect with you on a deeper level. So thank you for that. I mean that truly. And I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. I look forward to you passing this along and really allowing it to be part of your process as well. So on that note, I'm going to leave it right there and just remind you of how appreciative I am. And I love you for that. And I will see you next week. And I look forward to hearing your voice. Be well.